So how can small groups like this, how can we make a difference?
Yeah, people ask me that question all the time, and I know it's sort of the vexing, frustrating part of human existence. You know, so many people out there, and, you know, you have your concerns, and you want to take those concerns and turn them into something concrete quickly. I think when it comes to changing public policy, you have to be patient and persistent. Patient and persistent, and then also, you know, if you have a message, you have to consistently deliver that message to whatever group you want, whether you're talking about gun control, improving education, wherever it is. It's at forums like this, it's with your neighbors, it's patience and persistence. There is regrettably no magic bullet to fix all the problems out there. But, you know, the basics of political organization still apply. You know, develop a message and deliver it, and try to persuade people.
So I think I'm probably alone in this room in favor of a few things.
In favor of what?
A few things, like our beloved Sonics that have left us again. But the Blue Angels have been a huge part of Southeast Seattle forever. What's the chance of them actually returning to Sequoia this year?
Well, I think if sequestration remains in place, not good. And it's a vexing and frustrating part of it because, you know, I've always said that the public they are in support of cutting government spending in the abstract. If you ask them, would you like to cut this program by 5%? Yes. 10%? Yes. Overall government spending by 15%? Yes. But when you get down to the concrete proposals in which you say, okay, well, if we're going to cut this program by 5%, here are the things that we're going to cut. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't cut that. We want you to cut the things that are like, well, something else. They truly imagine that the government has, you know, billions of dollars just lying around in a corner somewhere that they won't miss. Now, it is true that the government is, you know, not a 100% efficient operation. I've been around the private sector often enough to know that they are not 100% efficient either. It's the nature of human endeavors. You could pick apart any effort at spending money and go back in there and make the people who spend that money look like a bunch of fools without any difficulty whatsoever. But for the most part, you know, you spend money, it goes to something. And if you spend less money, there is less of that something. Now, in particular, sequestration is problematic because it's an across-the-board cut. They keep saying, well, why are they cutting that? You know, they're doing that just to punish us. Well, no, sequestration very specifically says you don't have flexibility. You can't take it from over here. And when you're talking about the military, you know, we're still in Afghanistan. They still have, you know, they got North Korea freaking out. They got Iran. They got Al-Qaeda taking over Mali. They got a whole lot of things that they have got to train our military for. And when people talk about readiness, what they mean is the way the military does it is here's the mission set, and here's the skill set that you need to have in order to perform those missions. So you got to fly a certain number of hours, you got to fire a certain number of shots, you got to do a certain amount of training in order to be ready to go perform that mission. Well, when the budget gets cut, they can't fly as many hours, they can't drive the trucks they need to drive, they can't fire the bullets they need to fire, and readiness suffers, and it's suffering. And what that means is, and this is what the generals will tell you, and what members of Congress who have responsibility will tell you, of the many things the military does, the one thing that just, you know, is completely unacceptable is to take a group of people and put them in harm's way, not as prepared as they should be. So a lot of the peripheral stuff, you know, the air show that they do down in McCord, you know, air rodeo they call it, it's canceled, Fleet Week in New York, a lot of that stuff, they're cutting it because they're trying to scrape as much money together as possible to continue to meet their core mission.
But don't those programs serve as really effective recruiting methods? I mean, aren't we going to lose out then on the people that see the Blue Angels and say, that's what I want to do, I want to fly jets?
Yeah, recruiting's not a problem when you're dropping 200,000 people in the military. We're letting people go now who don't want to go. So right now, recruitment isn't the issue. I mean, I'm with you. I don't want to see it go away either, but that's the cut. I mean, I didn't support sequestration when it passed. I haven't supported it for 1 single second while we've been building up to it, and I'd get rid of it tomorrow if I was empowered to do so. But as long as it's there, these types of things are going to happen. Yes.
Do we need to be ready to go into all these hot spots? I got the joy and pleasure of serving in Vietnam, and thinking about it years after I came home, we didn't belong there. And my feeling is we don't belong in a lot of these places, and we largely go there because we provide low-income folks enough money. It makes more sense to join the military than not have a job. I think we'd stay out of some of these places if we reinstituted the draft so everybody's son and daughter had an equal chance of going. I've turned out to be a bit of a pacifist.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tend to agree. I mean, we've got all this talk about Syria right now. I don't want anything to do with Syria. And I'm not saying that it's not a huge problem, big humanitarian crisis, but the notion that the U.S. military has got to go in or is even capable of going in and solving every military crisis that's out there, I think is one that's wrong. There's a fight going on right now. I mean, the neoconservatives are coming back and saying, it is America's role in the world to be the indispensable power, that we have to be the one that's going to go everywhere and do everything and fix all problems, and that if somehow we at all step back from that, it's just a catastrophe. It's a sign of our weakness. It's going to, that's just not the way I view the world. I don't think the U.S. should be responsible for every single problem the world over, and I don't think that's the best way to advance our interests globally.
But it gives our military-industrial complex something to do. It gives the
It's-
weapons manufacturers
I think you're-
a job.
I could be wrong about this, but I think it is much more about a broad ideological belief than it is about the military-industrial complex, or even about whether or not we have a draft. It's about a view of America. I watched the 80s show that National Geographic ran. If you haven't seen it, it's really interesting. It's about Ronald Reagan and how he created this image of America. And I think it's about this image of America, but like I said, we are the one indispensable country in the world, that it is up to us to fix everything. We are God's chosen people on earth to go out there and make sure that there is peace and tranquility as we see it on earth. And I think that drives these decisions more than any of the rest of it. Yes, there's also a lot of money made on it, and there's a lot of other factors, but I think if you really want to stop this, you've got to go right at that ideology. Now, that said, since World War II, one of the basic constructs is that the United States of America has been the guarantor of security in certain places of the world. And I view this slightly different than what I just talked about, different than the notion of, well, we've got to go everywhere and do everything. We're the guarantor of South Korea's security. And if we were not the guarantor of South Korea's security, and Japan's, by the way, what do you think North Korea would have done over the course of the last 20 or 30 years? If they didn't know that rolling across the border into South Korea or attacking Japan would unleash us on them and they'd get their asses kicked, I can't imagine what they would do. So if we woke up tomorrow and said, we're taking the 20,000 troops out of South Korea, we're taking the forward presence that we have out of Asia, I think you'd see a mess in that particular part of the world in a very bad way. You had Al-Qaeda trying to take over Somalia, because of our capability working with partners in that region, we were able to stop them. If we weren't there, they would not have been stopped. And then what? What's going to happen in Mali? What would have happened, in Iraq if Saddam Hussein, had gone into Kuwait and nobody had said anything? He'd have gone into Saudi Arabia, no doubt about it. Now, how does all that play out? Arguably the Middle East, without question is still a mess. Is it a bigger mess than we had if we hadn't been there? So a lot of the training, a lot of what we would do is to protect those very specific goals and to serve as a deterrent.
South Vietnam went communist and it's taken
Hey, I'm not-
capitalism
I-
to an art form.
I am not defending the Cold War, okay? By any stretch of imagination, I'm not defending Vietnam. I'm talking specifically right now. Would it be a wise strategic move for the U.S. to downsize its military and cease to be the guarantor of security for South Korea and Japan? Would that be a wise thing for us to do? I don't think so.
Can we be selective? Don't get into wars you can't win.
Oh, yeah, no, that's
Well,
just,
Don't get into civil wars,
that's,
Well,
that's.
because when we get into a
Right.
civil war is when we fail.
That's just what I was describing, was that's why Syria, I mean, the idea that we should go into Syria and do something, I think is just crazy. You know, but to be a sufficient deterrent against bad actors, you know, like Iran and North Korea, is a role we do play.